Ligayang araw. In this lesson, I will be discussing valid and invalid arguments and its example. In mathematics and logic, arguments is a sequence that ending in a conclusion. So every argument consists of a number of statements that is called premises, and which together offer the supports for the belief that another statement is called the conclusion. In a valid argument, it is not possible that the conclusion is false when the premises are true. So in the other words, valid argument whenever the premises are true, and then the conclusion also has to be true. While on the other hand, invalid argument is one whose conclusion is not proven by its premises. That is, even if all the premises are true, hence the conclusion is still be false. So here are the examples for you to be able to understand the valid and invalid arguments.
Here is the first example. We have premise 1 and premise 2. In premise 1, I'm either cold or hot, and in premise 2, I'm not cold. The conclusion is I am hot. If we look at the truth table, we notice that this one is a tautology. So, this is a valid argument. Next, we have premise 1 and premise 2 and the conclusion. Premise 1, if I'm at the beach, I get sunburned. Premise 2, I'm not at the beach. The conclusion, I won't get sunburned. Again, if you're looking at the truth table, you will determine that this argument is invalid argument. Why? Because this is not a tautology. And this is called the fallacy of the inverse, where we have a statement like P implies Q. Another example, premise 1. If you wear an enormous cowboy hat, people will stare. Premise 2. If people stare at you, you get embarrassed. So, the conclusion, if you wear an enormous hat, you will be embarrassed. If we make this table, we get a column that's all true, so this argument is valid. Another, premise 1, if you watch the Dollhouse movie, you will cry. Premise 2, if you cry, your shirt will be stained. Thus the conclusion, your shirt is stained, so you must have watched the Dollhouse movie. So let's prove it using the truth table. Based on the truth table, you will notice that there are two false rows. So this is an invalid argument. So this will be the last example. Is this argument valid or invalid? So let's find out. Premise 1, if I work hard, I'll get a raise. Premise 2, if I get a raise, then I'll buy a boat. The conclusion, if I don't buy a boat, I must not have worked hard. So by using transitive reasoning, noting that the conclusion you come up with is equivalent to contrapositive, and then you can conclude that this argument is an example of valid argument.
That's all for today's lesson. Hope you understand the valid and invalid arguments.